It's story time again, yo, and I got a new idea, yo. Story time again, yo. I got a new idea, yo. But first, I'm still Kirk. It's still Dumb Test Late, the Story Creative Podcast. Let's get into this new idea.
Now time for some interactive fun.
Yeah, like I said, I'm Kirk. This is still Dumb Test Late, and I have a new idea. And I know what you're thinking. Again, yes, again. When you get hit with a new idea, you gotta run with it. That's basically what this podcast is. Me just running with new ideas. Will I ever finish it? Who knows? Let's just have fun along the way. That's what life is about. I know I was supposed to be writing a baseball story. I was supposed to keep my Cosnier story going. I'm supposed to be writing the Miami Nights stories. A baseball one. I had one about, a gay cowboy gang, but all those I had put on hold because I got smacked in the face with a new story. I didn't have to run with it. Of course, it happened while I was listening to podcasts at work. On autopilot, tuning out, listening to true crime podcasts. And there's one that I usually listen to called Chameleon. It was like one of those long form podcasts where they do like one story over a few episodes, which are always good to listen to. But then they started doing like weekly ones. And this podcast is about people who pretend to be somebody else, to like, scammers and, people stealing stuff and all that people pretending to be someone who they're not. And they did a new episode with this woman referencing this vampire role playing forum in like the early form of the internet. It was based off the Anne Rice vampire novel, Interview with a Vampire. I do love vampire lore. I wasn't a big reader back then when those came out, and I never went back to them. But maybe they were worth like a revisit because I knew. But no, I'm getting distracted. See what you did? I'm getting distracted. Okay. So I was listening to this podcast about that, and it was actually a callback to an older broadcast episode they did about this forum where people would role play as vampires from the Anne Rice novel stories. But it ran into a problem where people would take it too seriously, and there was a lot of stuff with catfishing and inappropriate, communication with people who are underage and people taking it way too seriously. There's this whole role-playing fan fiction thing that was going on, and it got way too serious. It's really interesting to me to listen to because I'm always fascinated with people who kind of deep dive into this role-playing and take it, of course, they take it way too far. And I was listening to another podcast, and I don't remember that the idea sparked or the light bulb idea that came from that. I'll remember it at some point and yell it into this microphone. Of course, it was some kind of true crime or detective thing. And then the light bulb moment hit me that I wanted to create a story idea based on that. People who are role playing, it may not be like an internet forum or stuff like that, but take their obsession with a fiction too far. And I was like dwelling on what I could do with that. And previously, I was randomly writing this new story. I know, new story or new character kind of thing I like to do. And it's called in media res, like these things I'm trying to create and put more into the show in media res scenes. Where it's just a scene in the middle of a story. You don't know anything, backstory, anything. You're just thrown into the story. And I really like writing those. And I was just doing that as random like noir detective story because one of the things I've always wanted to do is write a really great noir detective novella or story or character. And I was just writing a random one like that. And my twist on my detective, the hardboiled detective was I do like putting occult and spiritual stuff in the random stories. It'd be a regular detective, but he has this kind of vision where he can see kind of glimpses into the future. But they're only glimpses of himself and things going bad or bad stuff happening to him, kind of symbolism, future visualizations that pop up to him. And he can kind of only see bad stuff happening to himself. I know there's a better way to put that would sound more occult or spiritual and stuff like that, but I can't think of that word right now. But that's what it was. I was basically writing that, the noir story where it started with the dame walked in, like he knew he was in the scene where the dame walked in passed his office, he knew he would fall for her, and he knew that she would not fall for him and it would go horrible. He knew that already because he had seen it, and my story would be called The Cursed Detective. It was going to be like one of those old hard boiled detective noir stories like the Maltese Falcon and all those. It's going to be like that. I had that kind of cooking at the side. And then I was like, hold on, what if I put stories together? So going through all that, this is my new story idea. It's going to take those obsessed fans that are really obsessed with a story and fan fiction and kind of going really deep into it where they lose their line of what's real and what's fiction, and that cursed detective story, and also adding a real element to it. So the story I'm creating now is going to be called The Pages of the Pentacle. Okay, let me explain. I'm bad at elevator pitches. My elevator pitches are like 20 minutes long, which is basically the episode of this show. So the Pages of the Pentacle. This is how it's going to go. It's essentially going to be, in theory, if I write it as a novel or a novella or pulp fiction, a serialized pulp fiction, which I really want to do. That's another thing I really want to do. Bring back pulp fiction. Not the movie Pulp Fiction, but what Pulp Fiction actually was, like those pulp detective novels or pulp science fiction magazines and all that. Think about it this way or that way. Not the movie Pulp Fiction, but what Pulp Fiction used to be, what Tarantino kind of stole it from. Or he was inspired by pulp story. So this will be a pulp detective story. So, Pages of the Pentacle. It's going to be, we're going to have a writer in real life writing these stories. And this is it's going to be the Cursed Detective. He's writing the story of the Cursed Detective. He's going to be in the actual story. But he gets to a point where he kind of loses his direction, or he gets a really bad writer's block, or he decides for like financial reasons or something to end this long series that, wasn't really big, but it had a big cult following. Had a really small but really determined and loving cult following that did like fan fiction and LARPing and had these forums online and all this stuff. And people cosplayed as characters like the detective and the bad people. Like his hero is going to be this cursed detective that can see glimpses in the future. This kind of noir, not faulty, but not that great detective because he's cursed. He's struggling with all these things, but he's on the good side. He is the hero, and the antagonist of the story is kind of this cult, this dark cult that keeps haunting him, like in different ways. He has different ways to defeat them and figure out what's going on with these mysterious murders or kidnappings and all that stuff. That's kind of the fiction story that our writer is writing. But at some point of this, I'm thinking of like kind of financial reasons or something like that, he kind of stops doing it because it's not making him a lot of money, and he has opportunities to do other stories like for bigger studios or bigger, publishing houses. And he announces to this small fan group that he's going to end it. And the fan group kind of flips out and does not like this. They really are angry with him. That was the setting of my story. And then I had the usual fear of me being a creative, that I'm spending all this imagination time and thought and effort into something that's already created. And I was like, am I just coming up with the idea and the story of misery? And I was like, oh yeah, that's, an obsessive fan kidnaps, this opportunity where the writer in that story breaks his leg, and he's, I don't think he's out in the middle of it. It was like farmland or something. And the woman that takes him in is a really obsessive character and loves like one of the characters in the story. And he tells her that he's going to kill that character off. And, you know what happens. Misery. And I was like, I don't want to, I always have that fear of everything I'm doing is something that's already been done. So I was like, what's my twist on it? So I used the example from that episode of Chameleon where the vampire fan fiction went too far. People lost their line of fiction and role play and reality and kind of took things into the real world in a bad way. And I was like, maybe that could be the situation in this story where there's these fans. They have this online role play. They do LARPing, live action role playing, and they're really angry with the writer for ending this story that they love. Like they're part of this small community. It's not like I said, it's a cult hit. It's not a big story. It's not, and they feel like they have ownership to that. A lot of times when somebody who is starting out small and then they have a small fan group and then they kind of blow up and get really popular, that small original fan group always has this like negative feeling towards the creator sometimes, where like they have this sense of ownership, like we were the original fans and then they sold us out. So it's going to be like a fan group like that. And they're already way too deep into this fiction that was created by this story. Like, it's going to be a long serialized story that the writer's writing about the cursed detective and this occult, antagonist group that he's hunting over a long period, over many stories. So what happens with these obsessive fans that from this forum or this role-playing group, they already, say online, they role play as the antagonist group, this occult, mysterious group. So what their plan is to not, attack the writer. They kind of feel for him because they look at the writer kind of in the same way as themselves. They look at them as a faulty person or, a person with struggle with mental health and all that stuff. So they kind of come up, their blurry lines between, fiction and reality has kind of given them a false sense of what to do. And that what to do to help the writer in this story is to commit crimes as the role playing, as the cult group in the story, and kind of present them to the writer in a secret way to give him inspiration to keep writing in the story. And it keeps going and it gets like darker and darker. At first it's like fun. They fake like pictures like, oh, I've been kidnapped by the cult group, and they send it to the writer and the writers kind of think it's a joke and all this stuff. And they don't think the writer is taking them seriously or getting the point, and it gets more and more serious because this group of fans kind of has lost their sense with reality and jumped into the fiction. They start to think, hang on, oh, we got a dog, hold on. And we're back. Sorry about that. The guard dog had to protect us from people walking past the front door like he usually does. But like I was saying, this fan base, these group of fans who are losing their touch with the reality, kind of hold the writer hostage, where they think they're helping him to inspire him to keep this story and this character going by doing these real world atrocities, as cosplaying as the cult from the story. And they basically hold the writer hostage. The writer doesn't know. Hang on, dog's back. Okay, I think we're good. We're saved. He kept us safe. Oh, no. Sorry for that break again. We're safe. The dog kept us safe. But yeah, our writer, he's basically stuck between wanting to report these people. Like he starts to lose his sense of reality because they're cosplaying as this occult from this cult group from his story. And when earlier on he reports it, but he's like not really taken seriously by authorities that he reports these crimes to. They think he's just playing around because he's known for this this detective and occult story that he's writing. So he basically feels held hostage by this group because he doesn't know. He kind of puts it out there, say, stop doing this and this is what's going on, and fans start to think that it's part of the story. He's doing some like real world advertising or some guerrilla marketing to bring the story back, but it's actually happening to him, and he's kind of stuck and trapped and doesn't know what to do. Yeah, and that's Pages of the Pentacle, because kind of the pentacle is the kind of the occult theme that's shown, or the symbols shown within the story in pages, as far as the double entendre of pages of a story and pages like I think it's mainly in the government, or like the NBC pages, people who are like interns that help out this fan base occult group think they're like pages helping out the writer, but they've lost their sense of reality so much they don't see the harm they're doing. They've fully think they're the members of this occult from this fiction story. So the writer is basically the one who kind of in a way has to stop them or basically just help them, because he realizes they're fans from this group. They're lost. They've lost touch with the reality, and this is what they think is helping. Like if he really goes forward and puts them in jail for the rest of their life, like he doesn't think this is really helping them, but they're also kind of stepping up their atrocities, cosplaying as this, occult group to basically inspire him. So he's basically trapped in that. That's the big conflict of the story. And so it's going to essentially, like if I write this, is going to be writing two stories at the same time, which I always kind of love reading or seeing going on. Like you have the story that's set in, reality of the fiction and the other fiction that's going on. They're going to like bounce off of each other. If I'm really good at it, or I become good at writing, maybe I'll do this. Like I've been trying to push myself to do this, the Atomic Habits thing of writing a little every day. It sounds difficult. Maybe this, because it is difficult, is the thing that I'll actually do, like easy things I should have done a long time ago as far as creating stories or writing stuff or finishing, has fallen by the wayside. But maybe this high difficulty level of keeping two stories going at the same time to tell essentially one story is difficult enough that like, this is the one I'll achieve, because it's, difficult, and I'm that weirdly wired brain that can do it. Yeah, that's the main thing of the story. That's like the story that I, the idea bulb that went off slapped me in the face, and I was like, I gotta create this. So I went through and ran, looking up a lot of like symbolism. I mean, I could go deep with the occult and creating that, the antagonist, and creating this cursed detective that has this kind of occult thing going on with him, where he can see small glimpses of bad things happening to him in the future and how he uses that to solve these crimes. And a writer that's struggling with creating and being trapped by this, fan base that's basically taunting him and holding him hostage by doing atrocities, and how he deals with that. So there's going to be a lot of conflicts that go on at the same time, but they mirror each other, because you have, faulty people creating faulty characters being chased by faulty people who want that faulty person to, create more. So it's like a mess on top of a mess. And it's going to break the fourth wall. I always love stories when they break the fourth wall and become meta. Yeah, so that's like the original idea. And I do have an in media res scene from this that I want to throw out there. So let's do that one next. Okay, so this is the in media res scene. Our detective hero is sitting in a bar after or before the meeting of the dame that I talked about before. The dame walks in, going along with the theme that our hero is cursed in a way that he can see glimpses of the near future, but only bad things that will happen to him. He looks over to the person next to him at this quiet bar to see another woman decadently dressed. She's well dressed. She's over well dressed. Just think of what that word should be for an almost dive bar like this. His senses kick in as this woman seems to be out of place, as he also notices her way too fancy beehive hairdo with realistic looking bee hair clips. As he looks quickly away from this obvious cosmic plant in his tiny universe, he can see the bartender now making a specialty drink for this beehive femme that involves an elaborate honey dipper setup. After a quick sip of his half-melted, iced-down drink, our detective quietly exclaims to himself, laying it on a bit thick, aren't you? The double entendre seems to land on our detective, as the scene happening next to him seems totally independent of his presence and witty observation. Glancing back to his now empty, condensed, droplet-covered glass, an unfamiliar rhyme between him and the curve of the bottom of the clear glass started to echo in for our cursed detective. The first cough echoed right back at him, returned and reverberated from the small sipping glass tight in his hand. With his view now watered down as the previously ordered drink, from fast-forming panic tears, each tightly squeezed eyes, more deeper and deeper coughs shouted out of his mouth. When enough tears fell hurriedly from his fast-burning eyes, he half expected to see blood pooled at the bottom of the chipped drinking glass. But the sound was the first scene that led to his stunned, surprised view. In the bottom of the half-chipped lowball glass crawled a newly spawned honeybee. Two saliva-covered wings glinted and attempted to shake off the dread and slime of its new reality in this shaken world. Our confused detective sat in a complete state of stupidity, trying to establish some kind of explanation of his sudden new reality in the bottom of the glass. Resisting the first obvious reply to the situation of check please, his witty response to this shocked new bar patron was put on hold, and the previous painful cough came back. Closed-eyed tears returned to a pain-filled face. Our hero now was fully hunched over the bar in front of him, with his hands gripped tight, holding on to something that felt real in this now forced, uncontrollable, full-body coughing heave. Still with eyes tightly closed in response to the violence of the cough, forcing themselves up through a breached open mouth. And I don't know how I messed that up. He could only hear more of what was now mysteriously emptying out of him. His newly returned blurred sight confirmed the fear and dread of his reality in front of him. His low ball of once watered down bottom shelf whiskey swarmed with familiar covered honeybees, buzzing now onto his trembling hand. Before he could realize the situation and the horror in front of him, he looked up to see the bartender looking back at him, and just with a quick note said, "Oh, you got the message." And that's scene. That's my in media res badly written scene. I do them like at lunch break at work on my Kindle Scribe while listening to random jazz fusion music, imagining I'm in like a weird coffee bar. But yeah, that's the scene. Like our cursed detective is sitting at some dive bar. And this is like his vision, how his visions come to him. And he can't tell if this is real or it's all in his head, because he's a cursed detective and his visions are, bad sightings. So the bees that are like he's coughing up into the glass, that's kind of the message he just got from the occult antagonist group. That I need to come up with a name from. It's going to go off the word Pentacle. I think like Chaos Pentacle or something like that they call themselves. There's very different versions of the Pentacle, so I need to find a name for them. But like that's how they send signs to him, or that's how he realizes that they are near. Like he's on a case, and this is how his vision comes to him through these bees, which isn't really happening. It's his curse. This is how his visions come to him, and the bartender isn't really there saying that to him. He's just having a vision of that. Like he snaps to, and it's just him, coughing up a bad drink, and everybody's staring at him. But he gets the message that the antagonist occult group is near. So that was my in media res scene. I need to write it better. I'm trying. Atomic habits. You got to write a little a day. You got to do a little a day. Little small habits to build up big ones. But yeah, that's my Pages of Pentacle story idea, my new idea. I want to write more on this because this is good. It's like the creative juices are flowing to kick me in the butt and get me into the creative writing habit again. Before I start rambling on, thank you for listening. I'm still Kirk. It's still Dumb Test Late. Who knows what the next episode would be, I should say. Another new idea, but hopefully I can keep this going, because my promise was at least 2 episodes for each idea. So this is the first episode of the Pages of the Pentacle Curse Detective story. I want to write more about this. I want this story to come to fruition. But I'm rambling. So thank you for listening again. I'm still Kirk. It's still Dumb Test Late, the Story Creative Podcast. Be nice to yourself. Be nice to others. Do something nice for yourself. Touch grass. So I'll end on that one. Bye-bye.